Have you found yourself with someone who might be considered a difficult partner? Why is it that some of us seem to choose over and over again difficult people to be our partners in life? What is that? We seem to be narcissist magnets or something. It seems like many of us find ourselves attracting or being attracted to narcissists without even realizing it. So what is it that makes us choose such difficult partners? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today at queenbeing.com. Exactly what it is that makes us susceptible to choosing difficult partners. So let's get started.
Closed captioning provided by Athena Moberg and CPTSDFoundation.org.
I'm Angie Atkinson, and this is Toxic Relationship Rehab, where I help you discover, understand, and overcome toxic relationships in your life. So if you want to take back your life, embrace your power, and become the best possible version of yourself, hit that subscribe button, stick with me, and let's get going. So we all know that in today's society, we can pretty much choose to love whoever we want. But is it really that easy? Are we really making those choices? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. People ask me all the time, why am I always attracted to narcissists? Why is it that when I'm not dating a narcissist, I'm bored? Or why is it that narcissists are so attracted to me? Well, these are all legitimate questions, and we do have some pretty solid answers for you, so stick with me till the end of this video, because I'm going to share with you exactly what you can do to avoid this in the future. So the first thing we have to really talk about is, who is it that these difficult people are generally attracted to? And this might explain to you exactly why you keep ending up with these people in itself. Narcissists and difficult people in general tend to be attracted to certain types of people. So for example, you would think, based on the fact that they want to control and overwhelm their partners, that they would be looking for weak-willed, easy to push around people. But in reality, they're looking for the opposite of that. Why do you think that is? Well, they tend to go for people who are strong, people who are intelligent, people who are attractive, and people who are empathetic or empathic, people who really care how they feel. There are a number of reasons for this, starting with the fact that many difficult people feel like it's a challenge to get someone who's too attractive for them or too smart for them or whatever. With that being said, they also like to have someone on their arm who is attractive, and this is true whether we're talking about a male or female. However, there is the fact that male narcissists might be more likely to look for a physically attractive female, whereas female narcissists might also look for a physically attractive male, but they would be more likely to date a less attractive male if that person had a lot of money.
Side note, there are plenty of men who also use women for money. I just wanted to clarify that.
And that's unfortunate, but true. They almost feel like someone who is better than them is more of an accomplishment to acquire them and even to sort of knock them down a few notches in some cases. The other thing that you have to think about is the fact that as an empath, as someone who is wired to feel and react to other people's emotions, narcissists are going to find that very attractive. They want someone who will see them during their extreme moments of emotion and who will sort of instantly react to it. Because if you're honest with yourself, what is it that you do when someone is really upset near you? If someone's crying or someone's screaming, what do you want to do? The first thing I want to do is go over and put my arms around them and say, it's going to be okay, let me help you fix this. Does that sound familiar to you? If so, then you know that might be one reason that difficult people are attracted to you. Now, there's another side to this. Very often people who are attracted to toxic people tend to be people who were raised in situations where they experienced toxic people. Now, this may have been their parents, or it may have been someone who just happened to be part of their life. A teacher, a school bully even could affect you this way. And what ends up happening is that when you are constantly invalidated by someone, you end up feeling like you're just not good enough, like you aren't worth much better than that. And in fact, chaos becomes almost normal for you in your relationships. And so if you find yourself with someone who is more quote unquote normal, well, then you're finding yourself with someone who might be boring to you or who might feel abnormal to you because you didn't know anything else growing up. And then when you do find yourself with someone who's toxic, it almost feels like home because you don't know anything different. Another side to this coin is the fact that you might end up with someone who seems to be the opposite of the toxic person you grew up with, but really they're just another version of them. For example, you might have, like, say, an overtly toxic parent, and then you might come along and meet someone who seems totally charming and awesome and sweet and caring, but then behind closed doors, they begin to emotionally and psychologically tear you down. It's very difficult for us to see this in the moment, but in hindsight, it's almost always pretty clear. You might find yourself even breaking up with people who are too nice because it doesn't seem quite right to you. Maybe it doesn't feel like a challenge, or it just doesn't feel normal, or you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. So the negative feelings that you may have experienced in childhood could also be part of the reason that you are ending up with these difficult people in your adult relationships. You might have felt not good enough. You might have felt like you weren't allowed to say certain things or be certain things in your life. Your parent might have been someone who neglected you, who didn't help you when you needed help, who wouldn't listen to you when you wanted to talk, who constantly invalidated you either through neglect or direct invalidation. And then on the flip side of that, you might have had a parent who was overly controlling, a helicopter parent who wanted to have a say-so about everything you did, everything you thought, everything you said. In either case, it can be a reason that you might find yourself more attracted to difficult people. You might have dealt with not saying things to your parents because you knew they would get angry, or not expressing yourself for that same reason to some other toxic person in your childhood if it wasn't your parents. You might have been dealing with a parent who had a drug or alcohol addiction problem, and that could have caused them to neglect you, ignore you, or worse. There are a number of reasons that you might be attracting or choosing difficult partners, but there are things you can do to stop doing that now. The first thing you can do is sort of rewire your brain. And what I mean by that is, as you may know, our brains are considered neuroplastic, as in neurologists have proven that with certain types of intentional behavior changes, we can change the way our brain fires and therefore teach ourselves how to have higher standards, to sniff out those red flags that we could most certainly do better to avoid in the future. Another reason that you might attract or choose difficult partners, if you're anything like me, could be the fact that you want to help them. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I know personally for myself, I tend to be pretty good at communication. And if you ask probably most anyone I've dated in my lifetime, they would probably tell you that their self-esteem was higher at the end of the relationship with me than it was at the beginning. And the reason for that is because by nature, I want to validate people and lift them up. And I want to help people. And so if you're like me, you're a helper, you might see someone with a lot of potential and you might think, I can help them do better. And then you might fall in love with them in the process, and boom, there you are with a difficult person. So let's talk about what you can do to sort of rewire your brain to choose better partners. Well, number one, don't rush into anything, and give yourself some time to actually complete this process before you start dating if you haven't already. And that kind of leads me to my first point, which is to take your time. Getting involved with a new partner takes time, whether you are properly wired or not, because what it comes down to is that people take time to sort of relax and show their true selves. So if you always make it a point to take it slowly in a new relationship, you're going to have a more effective way of figuring out exactly who you're dealing with before you commit to them. One thing to remember is that you don't need to diagnose this person just to know that they're difficult or toxic. If someone makes you feel uncomfortable when you're around them, or you see tons of red flags, it is okay for you to turn around and walk away without figuring out a diagnosis. That is not your job or your responsibility. The only thing you need to know is this person good for my life or not? If you are with someone who makes you feel like they're psychologically or emotionally manipulating you, or if for any reason they happen to physically strike out at you, you need to walk away immediately. That person will not be a healthy partner for you. They will be a difficult partner. The next thing you need to think about is not making excuses for that person. If you find yourself making excuses for someone you're dating or someone you're married to, that's a big red flag. Because in most of those cases, what you're really doing is sort of enabling them by making those excuses for them. Enable yourself instead to walk away and do better. Don't put up with being torn down and devalued by your partner, even if they're doing it in jest at first. It's essentially the second stage of a narcissistic relationship, a toxic relationship, being devalued. First, you go through the love bombing phase, which is the idealization where they kind of put you up on a pedestal. And then you go through the devalue phase, and that's when they start tearing you down psychologically. That's a huge red flag. And with some narcissists, it won't start until after you move in with them. But with others, it'll start early. It'll just be subtle at first. If the relationship that you're in starts out like gangbusters and everything's amazing and exciting and passionate, great. But if suddenly it just plummets to rock bottom and you're miserable, give yourself a time limit as to how long you're going to work on that. Because of course there are certain situations where it might be understandable and justified. But in many cases, these relationships become not just debilitating, but they will literally almost paralyze you in your life, making you stuck and unable to get away. And you don't want to put yourself in that position if you can avoid it. So make sure you have clear boundaries and make sure you know exactly what you will and won't accept. This is why I always say that we need to have deal breakers, things that we accept and things that we don't in relationships. So number one for me is don't physically or emotionally abuse me. Number two for me is don't hurt my kids in any way. And number three is don't cheat on me. These things I will walk away, no question. Those are deal breakers for me. Anything else we can talk about and try to get through. And finally, make sure that you are prepared to walk away from someone who is too self-focused or too selfish, or most importantly, who lacks empathy and acts from that perspective. Because then you're definitely dealing with someone who is beyond difficult. They're just straight toxic. And it's not healthy for you or anyone else involved. So I'm going to give you a few suggestions to help you sort of stay on track and figure out exactly what you really want and make sure that you don't slip back into another relationship with a narcissist. The first thing you need to do is make sure that if you do happen to push someone out of your life because of narcissistic or toxic behavior, that you don't take them back. And if you do what Dana Morningstar always says. Tell them, okay, we can do this over a 3 to 5 year period, and don't let them live with you during that time. My point is, don't take them back. If you reject them because they've done something to hurt you or psychologically manipulate you, stick with your gut. You did the right thing. Don't take them back. Remember that if they didn't respect what you were asking them to respect, your boundaries or your deal breakers, the first time you went around with them in the relationship, they're probably not going to do it the second or third or fourth time either. So steer clear. And like I always tell you, trust your gut. Trust your intuition. Know that your gut, that feeling you get in your stomach or your chest when you feel like something just isn't right, listen to it. That's your intuition trying to reach out to you and tell you, hey, slow down. Anytime you're in doubt, take a step back and think about what you're doing. And maybe reach out to the person you're in a relationship with if you're doubting things and say, hey, you know what? I just want to slow things down a little bit. In fact, if you do that, one of the first things that you'll find out is that people who are toxic, they don't want to slow down. They want to hurry up and get there, get to where they want to be in the relationship. So if you ask them to slow down and they say no, or they get offended, then that's a flag that you can kind of consider pretty red. And that will give you an indication that maybe you really do need to step back. Someone who makes you feel terrible every time you spend time with them, or more times than not, is someone you don't want to be in a relationship with. So consider that as you're going forward. So what if you kick someone out of your life who isn't difficult after all, or who isn't toxic? Would you feel bad about that? A lot of people keep someone around because they're just not sure. So I'm going to share with you 5 quick tips on how you can kind of sniff out a toxic person a little faster. Number 1, share your opinion and make sure it's different than theirs. Disagree with them about something. Anytime you sort of assert yourself or put yourself in a position to be on the opposite end of an argument with a difficult person or a narcissist, their reaction is pretty clear. They're either going to rage or they're going to have narcissistic injury and act like you've personally insulted them just because you have a different opinion. They might see this as a challenge to who they are as an individual person. For example, let's say they take you out to their favorite restaurant and you just don't like the food. If you tell them so, they're probably going to become personally offended and act like they were the chef that cooked the food in the first place. You'll see it and you'll know it's a red flag if that happens. Number 2, tell them no. Refuse to do something or give them something that they want. If they are a toxic person or a narcissist, they will flip out on you. They do not want anybody to push them to do anything they don't want to do, and they certainly don't want anyone to tell them no. So that's another red flag you can watch for. Number 3, share your pain with them about something that you're dealing with. You don't want to give them anything too serious just in case they really are a toxic person, but it could be something small, like something you're going through at work, or sharing with them something that happened to you in the past that was painful, but not too personal, just to keep yourself safe. Watch how they react. If you're dealing with a toxic person, they will either do one of two things in most cases. If they're past the love bombing phase, that is, they will, number one, either walk away from you or emotionally abandon you. Or number two, they'll poke you. They will knock you down further or kick you while you're down. For example, I had a situation where someone close to me passed away, and the narcissist I was in a relationship with at that time literally made it all about him. It was my relative, and this person made it all about him and made the whole funeral and stuff surrounding that all about him. It was horrible and painful, and I knew that was a sign, and it is a sign of a toxic person. So see how they behave when you are in pain, and you'll see the lack of empathy almost every time, especially if you're beyond the idealization phase of the relationship. Number 4, share something personal. Now, it can be a fake thing. I've talked about this before, but for example, I have green eyes, and maybe I say to this person, I wish I had blue eyes, but I have green eyes, and that makes me feel insecure. Well, if you're dealing with a toxic person, the first thing they're going to do is start to notice everyone with blue eyes and think they're beautiful and awesome and amazing and point them out to you. And that's done to sort of minimize you as a person. It's done to sort of make you feel insecure, and it works if you're not careful. So a toxic person will use something like that as a way to get to you, a way to hurt you, and that is a red flag. Finally, number 5, tell them something that you have accomplished. See how they react. If they react in a way that is positive and they support you and they lift you up and celebrate with you, then you're in the clear. But if they either ignore your success and don't comment on it at all, or they minimize it, or they even try to negate it, then you're dealing with someone who might be toxic or difficult in a relationship. So if they're shutting you down, if they're putting the attention back on themselves, or if they're completely ignoring you or minimizing it, then you know, in fact, that they are toxic. Bottom line, I think the main reason that we choose difficult partners is because we end up going after someone who feels normal to us. So if you're feeling like you're constantly finding yourself either attracted to or attracting difficult people in your life, the first thing you have to do is work on your own self-image and recognize that you truly do deserve someone who will love you the way you deserve to be loved. And if that person doesn't present him or herself to you in the form of another person, then consider looking in the mirror and starting there. Learn to love yourself the way you deserve to be loved. And then maybe you'll be a little more open to meeting someone who is someone who will love you the way you deserve to be loved. And learn to set your boundaries. Learn to know what you will and won't accept in a relationship. And don't be afraid to walk away from someone who does show you those red flags. This is really important stuff if you're going to be happy in your life and if you're going to be the best possible version of yourself. All right, now this brings me to the question of the day. And the question of the day is, have you found yourself attracted to difficult partners, and how did that look for you? Are you still involved with these difficult people, or have you moved on? Share your thoughts, share your ideas, share your experiences in the comment section below, and let's talk about it. I'm going to share a playlist for you right there. And on that playlist, you are going to find videos that will help you learn how to spot red flags of toxic people and learn how to increase your own peace and your own self-confidence so that you can take your life to the next level. Take a look at it when you get a minute. Now, before I go, I want to make sure to give a shout out to my amazing channel members, those people who choose to support me through the YouTube membership program. Thank you so much for your support. It really does mean the world to me because you're helping me to further grow my mission to help narcissistic abuse survivors discover, understand, and overcome narcissistic abuse in toxic relationships. You'll see their names scrolling right there. And to everyone who likes my videos, subscribes to my channel, shares my videos, and comments on my videos, thank you so much. Every action you take toward one of my videos helps me to spread my message just a little bit further and help more people. I genuinely appreciate you. Thank you so much. Now, before I go, make sure you take a look at the videos I'm leaving for you right there and right there. And while you're here, hit that subscribe button so we can stay connected and continue on this healing journey together. I'll see you soon.